Hi everyone, John here from Bing's Academy. If you've been following the channel, you know I'm all about giving students information to help achieve their academic goals. And today I want to talk about one of the most simplest but most powerful strategies that many parents often overlook when applying to selective high schools, listing 3 preferences instead of just 1 or 2. Now I get it, when you're applying for selective high school, you want to just show strong intent. You want your child to get into that one perfect school. So it might feel natural to only put down 1 or 2 school options and you're really aiming for, and that's it. But what most parents don't realize is that this strategy can actually limit their child's chances, both statistically and psychologically. So today, let's unpack the 3 biggest reasons why applying to 3 selective high schools can seriously improve your child's odds of receiving an offer and why it might just make it in. You might have heard that listing multiple schools does increase your chances of getting an offer. And while that is true to some extent, it's also important to realize how the system works so you have more realistic expectations and maximize your chances too. So all students are ranked based on their test scores, and offers are made based on the rankings relative to the number of spots available at each school. Your child's chances at each school depends on where they're ranked compared to the other applicants who have done the selective test in May. If your child's ranking isn't high enough to get an offer for their first preference, the application will automatically be considered for the second or the third preference. But because rankings reflect competitiveness, if your child ranks lower for one popular school, they might also rank lower in other highly competitive schools. So listing more schools doesn't necessarily guarantee your chances would double or triple. Instead, the benefit comes from listing schools with different levels of competitiveness and popularity, as that's how it's all decided anyway. For example, your first preference might be very competitive and in high demand, while your second and third preferences might be schools with less competition or different applicant pools that are interested in that school. So increasing your chances of making it in based on your ranking. Now, before you get worried about listing backup school options to hurt your chances for your top choices, let me clear that up. It does not. The system matches your ranking to the available spots, and schools don't penalize you for having multiple preferences. Having backups won't make your first choice school less likely to offer you a place. It just keeps your options open. Especially for Year 7 entry, the Department of Education doesn't consider the specific school's preferences or opinions, like in Years 8 to 11 where the school decides. If you don't put a school as their first choice, then they might think about it if you're on the reserve list and you're also on the reserve list at a different school. But it's very different for Year 7 entry as it's purely based on ranking. They don't have an opinion in that regard. Also, your ranking doesn't change depending on how many schools you list. Your test performance sets your ranking, and that stays the same no matter what. Listing more schools simply gives your application multiple chances to be matched with schools where your rank fits the demand. Think of it as having one ticket, but multiple doors where that ticket might get you in. If it doesn't work for your first preference, then you can try for your second and then your third. Imagine your child's rank is about 140 out of the 18,000 students who did the selective exam last year. Baulkham Hills High School has, let's say, about 130 selective places, but it doesn't necessarily fill all those spots with the top 130 students across all applicants, all 18,000 applicants. That's because some of the highest ranked students might have other schools listed as their first preference. So these spots can go for students ranked just outside the top 130 who chose Baulkham Hills as their top choice. Some students out of the top 130 might not all put down Baulkham Hills. Maybe they're interested in North Sydney boys, North Sydney girls, James Roos. Meanwhile, Penrith High School has a similar number of spots available, and Blacktown Boys High School, which is a partially selective school, has 60 spots available in a different applicant pool that might offer an even better chance if they're not successful for their first choice being Baulkham Hills. By listing all 3 schools, your child keeps more options open and improves their overall chances compared to applying to just one school. Listing only 1 or 2 schools assumes that everything will go perfectly well. Your child would ace the test rank highly, and there'll be spots open at that exact school. But life rarely happens that way. I speak to countless parents who are so disappointed that have nearly made it in or find a bunch of excuses on how they just missed out. Maybe they're sick, maybe they're unwell, who knows? If your child misses out and you haven't listed any backups, there's no safety net, there's no private school option, then you might lead to disappointment and regret if you have to go to your local catchment school. I've seen students so close to the cutoff for one school, but end up with no offer because they didn't put down another option. That emotional toll can be very tough on not just the parents, but also the students. Sometimes parents find out later that other students who similarly got lower scores in other subjects in the selective test got onto the reserve list that are higher than them or just straight out got an offer just because they didn't apply to that particular school, which is extremely frustrating. They get over it and they can do perfectly fine at their local school or private school, which is their backup. But that could have been resolved if they just put down 3 selective options as opposed to being very stubborn and only putting down 1 or just 2. Financially, selective schools offer a higher quality education with no tuition fees, besides the required admin that I guess most or all government schools require as well. In contrast, private schools like the King School can cost upwards of $43,000 a year for Year 7 alone, not including uniforms, books, transportation, which can add up to tens of thousands more on top of it over the 6-year span if you're staying from Year 7 to 12. Even more affordable private schools often cost between $10,000 and $15,000 annually. Getting into a selective school, even if it's your child's second or third preference, can save a family tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run. Even if your child's second or third preference is not really what you're looking forward to, that extra money could go towards a home deposit, extracurricular activities, tutoring, or simply less financial stress. For example, Epping Boys High School is a comprehensive public school ranked 61 in New South Wales in 2024. If your child doesn't get into their first choice preference, settling for Epping Boys could be a really good fallback. But why not also list more competitive selective schools like Parramatta or Girraween High School as a second or third preference? These are reachable and highly regardable schools that offer a selective string advantage without the financial burden of a private education. Many families think that if your child doesn't get in for Year 7, then that's the end of the road. But every year, some selective schools spots will open from Year 8 to 11. Whether it's students leaving the school, going overseas, moving areas, having a change of mind, or whether that school has an additional class available. It's what I did. In Year 7, I made it into Penrith High School, and then I transferred into Girraween High School later down the line. A common myth is that listing multiple schools makes it look like you're not committed to any school. But selective schools are only offered by merit and they're blind. No one gets penalized for having 2 or 3 preferences. They allow you to put 3 options for extra chances or more flexibility for the particular parent. If your scores and rankings fit, you'll get an offer regardless. So there's literally no harm to put down 3 options, especially for Year 7 entry, when there's not a high application fee for putting more options down. By listing 3 options, family can keep more doors open just now, but also in the future. The system rewards flexibility and strategic choices. So if you miss out initially, you have a better chance of a second preference to give it another go. Selective high school admissions can be quite stressful and overwhelming, and I understand why parents might put all their eggs into a basket as they think it's the safest bet. But the data, experience, and long-term benefits that are associated with it of listing 3 preferences down is just a bit of a no-brainer. Put it down anyway, and if you decide to reject it afterwards, then that's fine. But at least it gives you that peace of mind and that backup in case you don't have that backup in place already. So if you're unsure about which schools to list or you want to find the right combinations, then try to see where your student's level currently is, especially closer to the exam in May. If in March and April things are looking dicey, then put down school options that are a bit lower for your second and third options. Don't just put in the top 3 ranked schools because they were doing really well the year before. If after the exam in May, they're feeling like, hey, I actually don't think I did very well in that test, then change your options. You can still change your preferences and adapt them accordingly. There is a period of time where no changes are allowed, but you still have a couple of weeks right after the test. So if it's fresh in your mind and your child is telling you that they didn't perform to the level that they think they did, then don't try to force it in. If you're really unsure beyond this, I generally will have a conversation with all selective students that do tutoring with us after the selective test in May anyway, to get their feedback and their thoughts on how they went. So I'm happy to give that consideration if you're a current student. If there's something that you're interested about that I didn't mention in this video, please write it down in the comments below. If there's another video topic that you want me to cover, let me know too. I generally try to apply and reply to all conversations or messages that someone puts down on the videos. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, as it means a world of a difference. And I'll see you in the next video.